Hello and welcome to another episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I am your host, Neil Horwitz. You can find me on Twitter at NJH287. Hit me up on LinkedIn as well, where I post more content. Visit the website dsmsports.net for more episodes and content. And of course, check out the podcast, subscribe on your preferred podcast platform. Really awesome show for you guys today. It's a perfect timing for this episode as we are right in the thick of starting out college football season, depending on when you're listening to this. It's back to it, and it's year 2 of NIL, and I get to talk today to Marc Jordan. He is manager of product success for Teamworks, but really just does a ton of work on an NIL services with Influencer, which works with a ton of college athletics programs around the country, helping their students get content as well as build their brand and ultimately monetize their branding and get NIL deals. And we have a great discussion and hitting on a number of areas in that greater space. And it really gets you thinking too as well. Like, it's something that we touched on toward the end of our interview is what this could look like for the future for professional athletes as this up and coming generation of these, first time NIL activated athletes, however you want to call them, are going to be entering the professional leagues with a lot more knowledge, a lot more skill, and a lot more experience, frankly, in the space of monetizing their NIL, and in a lot of ways, beyond what rookies obviously have today, and beyond even what some veterans have today, who may not have had their own merch line or be able to sell T-shirts in the past, or may not have been active on Cameo, may not have done NFTs, may not have done smaller deals, or maybe only does what their agent has put in front of them. And Influencer really and its counterparts in the space have done an excellent job of teaching athletes and empowering them to do deals, to monetize themselves in whatever way makes sense for them, their audience, their wants, their needs, their passions. And it's a whole new generation coming up to pro sports, so they're going to be expected expecting things to work that way in pros in some ways. And will we see professional teams be expected to provide some services that the college athletics programs have provided? Should there be a podcast studio at the team facility where a player can record their podcast, or a studio space that they can rent out or utilize to make content themselves? All the stuff that's becoming almost the norm in college nowadays, as the next arms race might be who can equip their athletes the best to monetize their NIL. How will that trickle its way up into the pro ranks? And again, making it a true partnership between the team/league, the team, and the athletes in producing content. Yes, the athlete will be able to build their brand more and monetize their name, image, and likeness more as well. That's part of the idea. And at the same time, they are becoming more and more powerful ambassadors for their team and for their sport. The more notorious, the more they get in front of fans, the better it is for the team, the better it is for the league. And it truly is, a rising tide will lift all boats in that sense. So super interesting to think about as you listen to this conversation with Marc, as to this new generation that we're building of college athletes that are very well equipped, very well trained in how to build their brand and monetize their brand overall as well. So listen up, just a tremendous chat coming up with Marc Jordan of Influencer. Right back with today's guest, and I am so psyched to learn from him. Already got a little taste of his knowledge, his passions from chatting offline. My guest on the podcast today is Marc Jordan. He is the manager of product success at Teamworks. And welcome to the podcast today, Marc.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Looking forward to learning from you. You've done a lot already in your young career, and you have a great opportunity there with Teamworks with helping really athletes, build their brands. And looking forward to picking your brain. But before we get into the meat of our discussion, tell us about you. Tell us about your career path, how you got started in the space, how you made your way there to Teamworks and Influencer, and any tips for folks that want to do what you do.
Oh yeah, definitely career path. Oh man. I grew up. Easiest way to go is to start that I grew up in Manchester, New Hampshire. So not Boston, but in New England. I grew up there. Not a ton of sport, not a ton of college athletics. So I knew that anywhere I wanted to go, if I wanted to work in sport, I needed to go somewhere further away or need to go somewhere that had more opportunities. One of the upperclassmen ahead of me had told me that he was going to the University of Tampa and that he said it was a great school. I'm like, Tampa, Florida, there's the Rays, they have the Bucks, they have hockey, they kind of have a little bit of everything. I didn't really know what I wanted to do career-wise at that point. So I just thought, you know what, I'll enroll for sport management. I'll try different things. I'll get an internship. I'll work different places. I'll see what's available. So I went to the school at University of Tampa. My first class, my first intro to sport management class, Tom Colby, who was the athletic communications director at the University of Tampa, so he oversaw all of the media relations for the sport department. He came in and basically told me that there was a full-time job for people who like to do stats. And I was a big stat nerd. Like all of the fantasy sports. I did football, I did basketball, I did baseball. Like I could calculate ERA. Like I love stats. I was such a nerd for stats. So when I found out that there was a job that I could do that, I was like, I have to work with this guy. I have to go and do it. So I became a student intern my spring of my freshman year. I moved into a student assistant role, which in a lot of cases at these smaller D2 schools means you're doing more. So I was in charge of stats and oversight of volleyball and baseball. I traveled with the teams as an undergrad. I got a lot of great experience.
And volleyball is like the hardest sport to do stats for too, because like it's impossible to keep track of every dig. And good lord,
it is. It is. My claim to fame was that I could actually do it by myself, so that like I could follow. Normally, you need like a caller and you need someone to input, just because it goes so fast and there are so many touches. My claim to fame is that I could really like teach anyone how to do it, because I could just do it by myself and they would just watch me or help me do it. So that was why I got a job so quickly with them. Is I could do volleyball stats, and all of these other schools were like, "This kid can do volleyball stats. I'm in." So yeah, I got my first full-time postgraduate job in 2015. I spent a couple years as an intern while working full-time as an enrollment counselor. But I went to a rival school, St. Leo, managed athletic communications there. I worked with men's and women's lacrosse. I worked with women's basketball, volleyball, baseball, softball. I got to really work with a lot of different sports. Tampa brought me back. They were like, Mark, we got a full-time job for you now. I came back as the assistant director of athletic communications, working with Tom again. And it was a great experience. What we did was we revamped the website. We really went in on branding. We launched new logos, because if anyone knows the University of Tampa, their logo 10 years ago was rough, especially it was an embroiderer's nightmare. So they adjusted that. But yeah, that led me to Texas. And I truly, truly to this day don't know what Texas saw in me, and what it was that was like, yeah, we can hand you the keys to one of the social media of the biggest brands in the country. We're happy to do that. No name man from Tampa, Florida. But I'm just so thankful for that opportunity. I'm really proud of what I've done at Texas. I'm really proud of what I did at Tampa. But really, really lucky to be here at Influencer now, helping other departments and athletes with what I've learned from social media and what I've been able to do.
And take me back a little bit to like as you were getting your foot in the door, and all the way into college athletics at the time at Tampa. Did you kind of picture yourself, okay, I like this college athletics path, like it's a very itinerant lifestyle. If you want to move up, you're going from school to school oftentimes. Like, did you think, okay, I want to figure out what this college athletics, career path looks like, or it was just like, hey, I love sports. I kind of got into this organically, and just sort of like you did what was put in front of you.
I mean, I was like every other sport management major before they actually get to school, thinking that everyone's going to be a baseball agent or everyone is going to be a general manager. So I went in there thinking like, yeah, I'm going to be a general manager for a baseball team. And the first class that I went to, like the literal first intro class, he said, the two easiest ways to get into sports is to go into sales or to marry the GM's daughter. And he just said that to the class. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, both of those things probably aren't going to work for me. So I had to put in the work, and I thankfully had a great mentor. I've had many great mentors and people who've come before me that taught me a lot. And I got really, really lucky.
Yeah, and we've talked to a lot of college athletics folks on this podcast, and I spent time in it myself as well, and especially at the smaller schools, like it's you're wearing a ton of hats. You are doing the media guides. You are doing stats oftentimes. You might be helping out with photography. You're likely helping out with social media and maybe even helping out with like wiping down the floor sometimes. So like tell me like where does social sort of fit into your role at Tampa? How did you sort of pick up on it? And frankly, how important was it to among all the other things you had to do just to keep the lights on?
Yeah. So social was kind of, it was something that Tom let a lot of like the student assistants and the interns manage more of because it was so new. We were part of the group that started the first Twitter account.
Wow.
Instagram wasn't even a thing until close to when I graduated. So we wanted to he let the people who were willing to learn and put in the effort, because he also recognized that if I had done a good job with it, then that sets me up for a future career somewhere else. Like he understood that that could be the thing that if he let someone do it, it's career making for them. I
Right.
tell a lot of the folks who are working in NIL now, especially student interns, or we met with the Oklahoma State brand squad, and we were talking with a couple of their students that are working with Oklahoma State athletes. And we tell them, if you do a good job and you set yourself apart in this is such a
Yeah.
new territory.
Ground
You can
level.
set yourself up for a great role if you do a good job now and really take ownership and make it as best as it possibly can be. And that's kind of how I looked at social at Tampa. I wanted to do the best that I could, knowing that, we were never going to be able to compete with a lot of the D1 programs. And I stand corrected, because we did a case study a couple months ago. Tampa Volleyball became the most followed volleyball account in
Wow.
the month of April. They added 190,000 followers.
What?
So yeah, they've
Wow.
like it's nuts. They've added 190,000 followers. They have one video that has over 170 million views on Instagram. At Texas, I think we were lucky. We got 2 million views on one video. Um, and this video had 176 million.
Good Lord, that's insane. That's incredible to hear. This is not the best segue then to this next question, but but thinking about going from a Tampa to a Texas, like was it intimidating at first, and what was that like? Just that process like of going from probably whatever a half dozen people that you're working with every day to a massive department operation there.
Yeah, I mean, I had imposter syndrome from day one. And I think even as I left, even my last day, I still had the imposter syndrome there, because when you deal with a brand like Texas, when you are given the opportunity to make something at a place like Texas, I could not believe that I was the first social media coordinator hired by them in
Wow.
2017. 2017, they added a social media role, and they trusted me of all people to do it. And it didn't. Every day I walked in with like this imposter syndrome, but on the same line, I wanted to prove to them every single day that they made the correct hire. I wanted to prove to them that I was the right person for the job. And I put in the work, I put in the time, and not every day was great, but I'm truly proud of where everything turned out on my last day, and how far we've come as a group and as a department, and on our social media accounts. And I like to think that some of the things that we did at Texas have started to translate other places, and other places that are doing well at social.
Yeah.
You kind of seen a little bit how their main accounts have shifted away from just like a dumping ground for ads, and truly a place to be like the super fan, and to help create FOMO, and to really give the fans a voice that I don't think that they normally would have had. And that was the strategy we took at Texas. So um, I would say imposter syndrome and not wanting to fail were the two things that helped me succeed at Texas.
That'll definitely light a fire. Both those elements for sure. Give us like a quick bird's eye view of what the Texas athletics infrastructure looked like when it came to social. And I know I'm sure that grew over your time there. What is football on its own island, like a lot of schools, and there's all the other sports are kind of together. Is men's and women's basketball on their own islands as well? Like what does that team look like there?
Yeah, so the creative team at Texas, there were 12 that were on the creative development team, which you got to credit Chris Delcani and Drew Martin for building that team
Yeah.
out. When I first started there, it was two separate teams, one housed in media relations, one housed in marketing,
Mhm.
different videographers, different social media coordinators, different graphic designers. It didn't make a ton of sense. So CDC came in, brought in Drew from TCU, and Drew was like, we need all the creatives together. We need them collaborating. We need them working together. So he put us all together, hired Kate and Hyde, best man for the job, absolutely
Oh
best man
yeah.
for the job. He came in, he made an impact right away. He got us all together. He got us all thinking creatively. He got a bunch of different personalities and creative talents to mesh. But football did have their own staff, or they did have their own crew. We were I'd say we were quasi collaborative with them. They obviously had their own objectives. They dealt heavily in recruiting, obviously. They had their own sort of look, feel, and voice. But I would say all of the other sports kind of fell under our camp, and we were assisting with social, we were assisting with graphics. We had in some cases, athletic communications folks managing accounts. We had two social coordinators. It was a pretty great team. We had, I think, six or so videographers, two and a half graphic designers, so a photographer, who I think that it's now more video focused there, but great team.
Safe to say, maybe a slightly bigger team than what you had at St. Leo or at Tampa.
Correct. I was the team at Tampa. Um, I was the team. Tom was great, but he left a lot of the creative stuff to me, and he took on a lot of the like event ops and management side of it. He protected me from having to be at all of these games all the time so that I could do more creative things. And I'm so thankful for him for that.
And what is the objectives look like when you're working day to day at a huge school like that, doing social? Are you judged on pure numbers? Like, hey, we want to hit these numbers. We want to grow more this year than we did last year. Are there certain branding mechanisms that you want to get through? Like, what are those kind of day-to-day objectives that will lead what you do day to day?
You're probably not going to like this answer, but they didn't really give me objectives at Texas. And I think that that was the smartest thing they could have done, because I mean, regardless of what they said as those objectives, I wanted to crush them. But in not giving me a goal, or not, they just wanted to be the best. It was a very ambiguous measure of success. So, I mean, we just made sure we focused on interactions, interaction rate, making sure that the things that we were posting were resonating with our audience. And then the other things would fall into line, like tickets would get sold. People would come to our events. People would be excited. We could promote different things. So they didn't really set objectives for me other than to, like, do a good job and make it
Yeah.
better than you, make sure you leave it better than you found it.
No, I like that. If you, especially if you do like hard numbers, and you just end up gamifying the platforms a little bit, and you're like, yeah, we can gamify our way to X number of engagements or something, but
Right.
it's not always the best
Exactly.
outcome.
Exactly. Like if it were, I have to reach X interactions, like I could cheat and get to those interactions. But would it be great for the platform? Probably not. We probably would post more than we normally would, or we would post things that aren't exactly great. And I'm even guilty of, farming for likes sometimes. Anytime I posted a Matthew McConaughey post, it would get
Totally.
tens of thousands of likes. And it's like, is that really, like, he's a great representative of the university, but like when I'm posting him once a month, is that really necessary? But I got the likes, and I think that they kind of changed that strategy up since I've left. I haven't seen a ton of McConaughey on the account.
Hey, I can't lie. If it was like 10 years ago, I'd be like, hey, it's McConaughey Mondays. Every Monday we have a McConaughey post.
But it worked, and he was such, like, I kid you not, he's the sweetest, nicest man, and he is a huge advocate for the university. Like, who wouldn't want that, like a man like that to advocate for us, and who wouldn't want someone like that to be an ambassador for the university? So I don't feel guilty about it, but I understand why maybe not everyone would take the same approach I did.
And when you're working with so many different teams, coaches, SIDs, players, student athletes, donors, like who ends up setting, like, it's not going to be a one person answer, but who ends up setting the agenda with this is what we want to represent. These are the stories that we want to tell. This is how we want to tell them. I like this creative look. I don't like this creative look. Like, what's that process like to making sure that everyone is on the same page?
So much collaboration. And I'm thankful that I did start in communications because I had a great relationship with John Bianco and all of the athletic communications folks who were on the day to day with these athletes and who did know these stories. And then also in my role and in creative development, we do work with pretty much every department. Every department's needs would be funneled through us. So you do end up building relationships across the entire department, which not many others, I think, do. The only department I think we never really interacted with was like the athletic trainers. So it's very interesting to see like external folks. We would have meetings. We would have during football season, we would have a meeting every Tuesday related to football, and we would talk about social, what we were doing on social. Marketing would be there, development would be there. So it's just kind of an opportunity to talk all things football. And then we of course would have our creative meetings, and folks would give us things that they want to look at or some campaigns that they were thinking about and what we could do. But it was a great environment for creatives. It was a great environment for folks to collaborate and build. And I think that that's what led to a lot of the success, was everyone being able to work together towards a common goal.
Totally. And did you find that I'm sure this is a big part in football with all the recruiting. Like how much of a demand was there for athlete specific content, highlighting certain athletes, and certainly we'll go into when we talk about NIL more specifically. Like, were you guys cognizant of, hey, we are promoting the team, and yeah, an athlete might be part of this, or is it really like, hey, like we think this is a star player. This player has a great story. This player is a great representative of our program. Let's promote them, or even get them to co-promote each other.
Yeah, I mean, it was very much these were the representatives of the university. Every single athlete was an ambassador for this brand, and we wanted to make sure that we were showcasing them. We were tagging them in content. We were making sure that they were getting content that featured them. Yeah. I mean, towards the end, and this is why I got to credit Caton, but we built a more focused plan on making sure that we got this content to the athletes more effectively. And that's what really inspired me to go to influencer. That was their bread and butter. They wanted to get this content and make it easier for folks like me to get that content to the athletes. So I loved making the jump, and I loved working for a brand that could do this for many schools and many partners.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I know just working with some of the major pro leagues in my current job, like they have player marketing is a function of their league, and they have people that dedicate full time to working on that. And that certainly is, pollinating or permeating its way into the college athletic space as well, where you have, yes, we want to focus on promoting the program and the team as a whole, but that's made up of these individual human athletes who can tell our story just as well. And were you guys cognizant of this, like, because especially a place like Texas where you have so much coverage beyond what the Longhorns are putting out? You have your ESPNs, you have your local media, you have, I mean, hell, even the Longhorn Network as well. Like, how much did you guys pay attention to what was going out there on media outside of your control necessarily, and making sure that, like, hey, there's an expose piece in this on this athlete that is telling a different story than we were aware of, or than we want to be out there. Like, how much did you guys pay attention to those angles and those athletes and those stories that were being put out on other platforms?
Yeah, we had some social listening tools, and we kind of put in some things that we were looking for, but I think in a lot of cases we had a crisis communications team, and we were prepared for things like that to happen. But ultimately, there was a ton of trust between the department and the athletes. I don't think any of these coaches would bring in any of these athletes that they didn't trust to represent the university in some form or fashion. And that was really great. And I really appreciated that, because I mean, I had, even at my time at Tampa, I had worked with coaches that just viewed social as a distraction, or viewed it as something that could only get folks in trouble. But Texas really embraced it, and Texas really got behind the opportunity for athletes to make the most of their time there and be representatives of the university. I think as soon as the recruiting part of it caught up, where they recognized that recruits were following their athletes, and that the more active and the more available and the more that their athletes were on social, the better it was for recruiting. I think that really, really helped. But even social media from 10 years ago, I think in a lot of cases, it was hyper focused on the bad things that could come of it by having this platform.
Right.
But all of those years resulted in so much learning and so many case studies for what not to do that I think athletes today, and especially as new generations of athletes are coming in, they're more versed in what's good and bad on social.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, it's like crazy to think that even right now, like whatever, 4 or 5 years ago, that there were team-wide bans, like there was no social media allowed, like, and it's like, wow, you're hurting. Like, that's a net negative for the program and for the athletes overall as well. When did the term NIL start to enter the lexicon for you at Texas? Like, when did that become an inkling, and how did you guys start, thinking about it early on?
I think during the pandemic, we talked about it some because we did want to put programming together. We did want to start the brand building portion of it because even if the athletes weren't able to monetize then and there were things that they could do to prepare themselves. And that's honestly when I started at Influencer, that was the strategy we took, was that it's a when, not if. We know that this is going to happen. And the more work that you put in now, the easier it will be for you when it does go into effect. So we would work with different teams, we would work with different departments to prepare their athletes, get them onto a better posting cadence, having them understand what's good and what's bad, the difference between editorial and commercial content, and reasons why you focus more on that editorial. Making
Yeah,
sure that they didn't just become, the NASCAR of Instagram, where there's just logos everywhere and
totally.
there's no value behind it.
And like, I guess before we move on, I just had in my head, give us an idea of, just give our listeners an idea of what influencer is. You guys do so many different things, from content technology to branding, education, to having these marketplaces and connecting. Like, there's so many things you guys do. So I'm gonna let you give the influencer overview.
Yeah. Influencer is content distribution at its core, but we've added a ton of NIL functionality. We have a verified product which allows compliance to oversee and kind of manage the disclosures from athletes. Some states require that, some states do not. Some institutions just are asking athletes to do that. So we wanted to provide a system to which they could do that. And then it even expanded further. And now it's a way for athletes to find opportunities in the NIL space and for them to promote themselves, create their own business card, make themselves available to these different companies. We've launched a couple of different exchanges, which are platforms designed to help schools have more oversight and be able to assist athletes in the process should they want to be taking that route. I think facilitation is still a bit of a gray area, but we're moving closer and closer to departments having a little more ability to help, which to me makes perfect sense. I mean, if the athlete's having trouble in class, they get a tutor. If they're wanting to get stronger, they have a strength coach. If their nutrition isn't there, they have a dietitian helping them. So why not someone in the NIL space? If they need someone to help them build their brand, or they need someone to help them understand a contract, or understand if a company asks for 10 social media posts over, a year period, like what that looks like and how to stay on top of it. So to me, I think it's a positive evolution, and we're going to continue to adapt and build new products and features that make sure that these schools and athletes are prepared for each step of the way.
What's the best way to, and this is not an easy answer or not a single answer. What is the best way to really get that knowledge, that information, that education to athletes? I mean, I think early on it was like, hey, we're just gonna make some courses available on demand, and they can take them if they like, or we're gonna like teach a class or a symposium type thing. Like, have you found, like, should there be accredited classes because athletes don't want to have more school or more homework or what it feels like? How do you position that so it's like, hey, this is not more homework for you. This is ultimately helping you, and or having them come to you, or give me an idea of what's working in that area.
I mean, I love that there are schools adding 4 credit courses so that athletes can get the education that they need, but then they also get credit towards their degree. I love that. I love that model. I also love that there are schools putting together clubs on their campus that help athletes navigate this and help them with content strategy. And they have students on that campus who want to learn and want to grow their own career and experience, helping athletes who want to grow their brands. I think that where we've seen the most success in our education is breaking it down into very simple things and making it sort of tiered. I think in the past, I'd been naive to think that we could give athletes, here are 20 steps to NIL success. No one's going to go through 20 steps. No athlete is going to go through and do that. I mean, we've offered some online courses that are quick, that have allowed athletes to learn very quickly, but breaking it down to, here are 4 steps that you can do. Here are the things that you could do in the next 5 minutes that will help you down the road, and then letting them learn as they go, adding more as they do the initial steps, but not trying to overload them too quickly, because there's one thing these athletes don't have, it's time. So making sure that whatever we ask them to do or whatever we try and educate them in is time effective, and it's not a huge lift on their end.
No, it totally makes sense. And as you're starting to get athletes on that track, how do you make sure that they're thinking about if there is a right way to think about it? Of, yes, you want to have a brand. Your brand is like, the idea of having a brand is not, I want to have a brand that all the businesses want to work with and give me money to endorse them, but a brand that is truly authentic to you, because you only get, that's you. You want to be yourself. So how do you balance that idea of, hey, I want to take every deal that comes my way and not necessarily concern myself if it's the right fit, and just in general too, you want to make sure you're portraying yourself in a way that is authentic to you. What's that balance like, and what's those conversations like of, this is make sure you're portraying who you want to be?
Yeah, I think our CEO, Jim Cavall, has the best analogy for this. He compares athlete NIL to Hulu. So in a lot of cases, you're paying for Hulu, you pay for the monthly subscription, but it still comes with commercials. Now, what he says to athletes is, think of your social media accounts as Hulu, and them following you is them paying for your service. If you were only offering commercials, would you pay for Hulu? If they were only showing commercials and not the TV shows, not the content, not the real reasons you're going to Hulu, would you still pay for it? The answer is no. So the same is true for social media and athletes. If a follower is following you, it's because they want to follow you. They want to follow your journey. If there's a couple commercials along the way, so be it. But as long as it's not all commercials, it'll be great, and it'll be a good journey that they'll want to follow.
And do you often recommend leaning, I guess, what's that process like of identify your passions, let's lean to those? What do you like to do when you're not playing your sport? What do you want to be known for? What are those initial questions that can help an athlete figure out, this is my brand? I didn't think I had a brand, but when I think about it more closely, I do kind of have a brand.
Yeah. Well, we talk to them about that, and we also break down kind of their audience, because we take them for their audience for what it is that day. So let's say they want to build their brand in a certain area, but we talk to them a little bit about, okay, well, think about your social media now. There's probably your friends and family who are the ones that have been following you from day one, and they will probably like nearly everything that you post. Then you probably branched out and got people who are competing in the same sport as you, teammates, or people who've played against you, people who are also going through the recruiting process. So you have that group. And then when you commit to a school, now all of a sudden you have anyone that has an affiliation to that school and likes your sport, or is following you because you're an athlete at this institution. Yeah. So as you are figuring out content and as you're figuring out brand building, understanding that when you post things and when you want to get interaction, you have to at least satisfy one of those buckets or groups. But the more of them that you can get interested in that type of content, the better and higher engagement it's going to have. So as you're adding in different things, like if you're interested in music and fashion, understand that those are going to be harder things to build early on, because you're adding a new type of audience into your current following. So you may not get a bunch of people who are liking that stuff because they're not following you for that to begin with, but that's okay. You want to build an audience that way. So just having them being okay with maybe the interactions aren't going to be there at first as you try and build that additional audience, but making sure that they are putting in that value, because every athlete's going to retire at some point. There's not many athletes get to, their last day, they're competing in their sport. So we want to make sure that they are setting up their audience to care about them for when they aren't competing anymore, and for when they do go and enter the workforce, or they retire and sail off into the sunset. We just want to make sure that audience sticks with them.
No, totally. You read my mind. They're thinking about that. You're building a brand. Yes, you want to maximize potentially your NIL for the next 4 years, especially if you're not going to be a professional athlete, and that doesn't go away. Like that brand saves you for the rest of your life. Those followers stay with you the rest of your life in theory. And I think that's really important to have that, balance that short term and that long term outlook. And it sounds like you guys are helping athletes to think in that direction. And what have you seen? I guess this is more of a trend type question. And just a few minutes left here with Marc Jordan. I can pick his brain all day. He is the manager of product success at Teamworks, specifically working with the influencer product or product suite. Like we've seen different approaches of more of the I'm going to monetize my NIL by maybe it's creating my own merch line, or I'm going to create a T-shirt, or I'm going to offer I'm going to go to your son's birthday party, or I'm going to do a cameo read, whatever it might be. And then you have the other side of the coin, which is more, I'm going to partner with brands and, for lack of a better term, hawk products or like showcase what products I like. Like, is there more like, are athletes more inclined one way or the other? Do certain athletes work better in one sort of side of the monetization coin than the other? Like, what have you seen both from an athlete and desire perspective, and what tends to play out more, and what's kind of more the low hanging fruit?
I think that the athletes have done a great job of innovating and finding different places and people and different ways to maximize NIL. I think for low-hanging fruit, Cameo has come out on top on this. Like a lot of athletes have Cameo accounts. They're completing that. So I think Cameo has been a great partner of ours in getting athlete opportunities, but they are innovating. And I love seeing the creativity. We recently hired a former softball pitcher at Duke, Peyton St. George. She actually, was competing in a volleyball regional, pitching in a regional against UCLA the week before we hired her. Wow. And she came on staff with us, but she was one of the biggest proponents, and she had a lot of great opportunities at Duke that she made for herself. She reached out to the local minor league baseball team asking if they wanted to have a softball athlete as a representative, and she has a strong social following. So I love seeing the innovation that has come of this. But obviously there are easier kind of, partner with a merch line so that if you have like a viral moment on social media for good reasons, or you have a big play, they're ready to act. Jocelyn Alo at Oklahoma, when she broke the home run record, they partnered with Oklahoma to make sure that people had a way to commemorate that and for her to be able to monetize off of that. So I just love seeing stuff like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, like, to be honest with that, I'm almost jealous that you get to see all these different ways that people can get innovative with trying new things and trying new ways to monetize a name image like this, trying new ways to monetize on social. And it's got to be fun to sit that intersection and see it all play out, because these kids these days, they're going to be able to change the world and come up with more stuff than you and I could on our own. It's got to be a lot of fun to see that for sure. How do you go? Like, do you almost have to? This is kind of a side question. Do you almost have to like study every night on what each state is doing, what each school is doing from a NIL policy perspective? Like, do the schools ultimately turn to you and look for advice, or you and your team, or does each school kind of do their own thing and it's like, we're going to follow our state, or we're going to err on the side of doing a little too much, or we're going to err on the side of doing not enough, or doing a little bit like what's that process like, just keeping up with it all?
Oh, it's a lot. I'm thankful that our COO was so on top of this. He like had a full spreadsheet as new laws were coming into effect and like what they meant, what are some like cliff notes of it. He made it super simple for our staff to be able to go from client to client. So big credit to him, James Coffis. But I would say that, a lot of our software is customizable. We have different for whatever the school NIL policy is, for whatever state that they are residing. We have ways for them to include their own NIL policies, attestations. We want to make sure that our tech works for them. So we do a great job of partnering with them. They do a tremendous job of putting their policies together and making the influencer system what it needs to be for their institution. So I'm very lucky in that I don't have to study super hard, because we had a cheat sheet and we had ways and people smarter than I who put all of this stuff together and made it really, really simple for our crew to all be on the same page.
I mean, I'm thankful for on your behalf because they're like I can't keep up with it all the time. One thing, and not necessarily in that vein, but one thing I wanted to make sure to ask about is the oomph of having these programs in place from a recruiting perspective. Like I know, like this is me speaking, not on your behalf. That some of the biggest days of you guys partnering with a university is the day that the announcement is made, and you have the headline, and hey, future recruits, future players. This look at all the cool shit we're doing to make sure that you're going to maximize your NIL, and you have your. It's always a joke in my own head. It's a joke, a running joke of like the single words, like amplify, whatever those verbs are. Like I in my head, there's like a dartboard with a thesaurus sitting in the influencer headquarters with all to choose from.
It's my thesaurus. It's me. I'm the thesaurus.
But like, how important is it to help the schools not just put all those things in place, but make sure that recruits, donors, all current athletes all know about it, and you get that maximal impact on day one and moving forward.
The only way for these programs and these things to work is for them to have substance. The recruit will be able to see right through any cute announcement or any branded program if there isn't anything behind it, if there isn't any substance behind it. So it's my role here to make sure that those programs have substance, and for me to make sure that influencer is doing its part to provide resources, education. If I'm speaking to athletes seminar style on social strategy, I'm going to do it. If I'm meeting individually with athletes to figure out what it is they want to accomplish and what they want to do and how they want to do that, like that's what we're going to do. But we need like this symbiosis between us and the department, because the department has so many resources. They have so many people who, and NIL touches so many different departments. I think a lot of folks think that it's mostly compliance, and compliance has a huge part in it, but creative is involved in it, student services is involved in it, heck, development is involved in it. So having all of these people involved and having a robust program that has substance is truly the way to make these announcements and make these recruiting pitches really, really work. Because if you can show it working for a current student athlete, that recruit's not going to have as many questions, and they're going to know that they're in good hands.
And something that's been interesting to me following along with influencer, and I promise we'll get to that shareable stat in just a minute here. I can keep Marc all day and all night. I felt like early on, like influencer was, or not even early on, just there's part of these programs that maybe are more coach driven, like, hey, I'm the head football coach or I'm the head basketball coach, and we need something in place. Influencer is the one that I think is the best. Let's put it in place. And you have the other side of the coin of more like coming from the ADs or whoever else it might be on that more administration side of things. How have you guys found the interest coming? And to your point too, having everyone on board. One thing that always stands out to me is when ADs are tweeting about influencer, or when Jim is talking to a coach or an AD on a podcast or an interview. Like, where have you guys seen the programs being driven, and how's it evolved over the time?
It could truly come from so many different departments. And I think that is what's led to a lot of the success here, is that if we are truly providing value to more than just our traditional customer, like let's say it's the content team and it's the content creators, because originally we were content distribution. That was our bread and butter. That was the foundation that influencer was built on.
Yeah.
But now that we are touching so many different departments, we're getting referrals from, student services. We're getting referrals from, trademark licensing. We're getting folks who in 2 years ago would never have known what influencer is, and we're getting folks who are becoming advocates for us because they see the good that we're doing and they see the value that we are bringing to our partners, and it's across the board. I mean, I look at departments like Oklahoma who are absolutely crushing it. They're doing such a great job. They have so many folks involved. I'm very, very thankful to be working with all of them. But I think that it's the recipe for our success is that we do have so many different groups and different types of people who are advocating for us. And then we find different ways, and it's across all of our products. Like Teamworks is the same way. Working with the Hub product, we have so many opportunities to delight and to make people's lives easier and to make them work more efficiently through tech. So I'm thankful to be on this team and to be a part of that, and to see all of these great advocates across our campuses.
Yeah, it's been cool to see like each individual might get excited for a different reason. Like a coach might be like, "Oh, we're gonna crush it in recruiting now." An athletic director might be like, "Hey, this is gonna really improve our student athlete experience." And there's just so many different ways that value can be
Mhm.
perceived and can be conveyed as well. Last one for you, Mark, because you brought up how influencer is part of the Teamworks family. Teamworks does works with teams around the world and leagues. It's like where does this athlete branding aspect, NIL, and all this educational material, all these opportunities that you guys have put together by working with partners as well, where does this fit into like the pro sports space? Are we going to have a future in 2 years, 3 years, 10, let alone 10 years, where every athlete's in the pros, or at least maybe 3/4 of them are like mini brands, mini creators, and everyone's going to have that skill set and that interest coming up?
I do think setting the tone now with the collegiate athletes, that's the foundation to get them to that pro level and to be more polished. I think that even a few years ago, I mean, we've had comments that maybe there are some holes in the onboarding of rookies and to having them understand the different things that they can do. The model's just so different between collegiate and pro right now that I would say that it's to be determined on our end, just because of collective bargaining and having associations speaking for different athletes.
Right.
We just don't have that right now at the collegiate level. So I would say it's to be determined on our end, or at least we could be working on it, but I'm not at liberty to say. So it's one of those things where less information is probably more.
No, it's going to be a fascinating thing to watch. I think as these athletes are coming up with that are now accustomed to being able to do these deals, being able to do these merch lines, whatever it might be, and then there's a whole different set of whether it's barriers or opportunities at the next level, and we'll have to see how it plays out, and it should be fun to watch. Well, Mark, we're gonna have some more fun with you coming up in our quick slant segment, so stick around for that. But first, episode shareable stat coming up right now. So great talking to Marc Jordan, manager of product success with Teamworks, talking a lot about what he does with influencer, of course. Really enjoy picking his brain about NIL, about athlete branding, about what all these schools are doing, and certainly enjoyed hearing about his time at Texas. And we're going to learn some more from him and have some more fun coming up with our quick hitting questions. But first episode shareable stat. This episode shareable stat is about Gen Z. And the fact that 1 in 4 members of Gen Z, according to a recent survey, 1 in 4 plan to become influencers. That's the plan. It's not even about a dream job, which we've talked about before on this podcast, but they are planning to become influencers, planning to make their living by creating content and getting brand deals, doing what these folks on YouTube and TikTok and this generation of the creator economy has built, so to speak. And it is a plan for 1 in 4 Gen Z individuals to become influencers for their occupation, to make their money when they quote unquote grow up, or even many of them are already grown, of course. And it really just dovetails perfectly with what we've been discussing today on the podcast with Marc, with these users, with these individuals who, whether they're college athletes or professional athletes or just regular folks coming up in the space, coming up through college, coming up through high school, and starting out in the work industry, that they plan to make their occupation by being influencers, and they are creating content. They're learning about the space, and we are now thinking about a generation of kids, a generation of users on the internet that are brand builders from day one. When I started out on my own Facebook page, I wasn't necessarily thinking about building my brand, although in some ways you can say I certainly was, by choosing what photos to post and who to have on my wall, my friends and whatnot. But these individuals now, this generation, is very strategic with social media. They are aspiring to be influencers and learning from what they're seeing out there, and are continuing to get better and better in the space as the tools get better and better as well. So super interesting thing about it, especially as we again just double down on what's happening in the sports space with athletes who are influencers in their own right, even before they step on campus, certainly before they step into their professional ranks. And how can these schools, how can these teams, how can their management services help them to really realize that dream of, yes, maybe being an athlete, or maybe athletics is a way to become an influencer. And it's just one more thing that they can be known for to help attract that initial audience. So really interesting stat. Again, the shareable stat, 1 in 4 members of Gen Z plan to be influencers, according to a recent survey. Think about it, talk about it, but more importantly, stick around for a more great conversation with Marc Jordan of Influencer. Right back from this episode's shareable stat. I am joined on the podcast again by Marc Jordan. He is the manager of product success at Teamwork, so working on the influencer product. Marc, you kicked ass in your interview. I'm now ready to give you all the deals, all the NIL deals, but are you now ready to run some quick slants?
Let's do it.
All right, we're going to line you up. Number one, the most notable thing that you've learned or realized being now at a startup for a year and a half now.
How quickly things change and how quickly growth can happen.
Totally. No, like the change aspect definitely rings true to me because like especially in the market that you guys are in with NIL policies are moving left and right. Like you gotta be able to pivot on a dime. That's for damn sure.
Absolutely, especially in NIL where we're building on sand.
I can't imagine when there's like a big article that comes out or a big news item or like even a law gets passed or introduced and like the Slack or Teams or whatever for influencer must just blow up all the time when that kind of stuff drops.
We're pretty poised. We're pretty poised. I don't think that anything ever comes as like a big surprise for us. We're a pretty poised group. We have a strategy channel on Slack that it's very interesting, but I don't think not many things catch us by surprise very often.
Yeah, no matter what happens, you guys are ready for it. No matter what.
We got a great team. We got a great team of leaders.
Oh, yeah. Number two, I want to go back to your days at Tampa, and give us a little education on Tampa. Who is the most famous athlete from the University of Tampa, and who was the most accomplished athlete while you were there?
I would say Tino Martinez is probably the most famous athlete to come from Tampa. And the most accomplished while I was there, she was my absolute favorite, Berkeley Whaley. She was a three-time player of the year, three-time All-American, won a national championship with Tampa, and then she ended up being our communications intern or graduate intern for a year. Just incredible human, incredible athlete. My favorite athlete I've ever worked with.
Which sport was she in?
Volleyball.
Volleyball.
Okay. She was a volleyball outside hitter.
There we go. I will say too, like growing up or going to college with a good volleyball program, like I became a huge volleyball fan in college. They're fun matches.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, she's one of a kind, and was very lucky to have her.
Oh, I love it. Number three, I'm interested in this one. Tell me the most memorable, the most popular, however you want to take it, social media post from your time at Texas.
So this one is one I've been dreading because it is our infamous barbecue tweet it wasn't a tweet. We made a TikTok, and this is when I learned that you don't necessarily have to post everything that you post on TikTok on Twitter. But we were trying to make a cute version of that trend where people would put like a logo over a latte and then they would like put cinnamon or chocolate over it, over a pattern. So we thought, hey, let's do that with barbecue. So we got one of our interns got a plate of barbecue and she put the plate together, but she saved half of it. So she saved half the barbecue in case she messed up this first one so that she would have a backup plate of barbecue. So it was the saddest plate. The saddest plate. And then like we played it and it got over 1 million views on TikTok, but barbecue Twitter roasted us because they were like, they said that they were so upset because we did not put all of the barbecue on the actual plate. And I swear, like I was up late that night being like, oh, I wronged somebody. We got into a beef with, no pun intended, we got into beef with a local barbecue staple that, has been so good to us. So it was just, man. infamous barbecue tweet.
Don't mess with barbecue Twitter, apparently. Jeez.
Don't. Please don't.
Have you seen athletes really jump on TikTok or like have you seen Twitch or YouTube? Like what platforms have really blown up among athletes?
Oh, TikTok for sure. Yeah. TikTok for sure. Like we encouraged. I encourage folks now. I still meet with some departments that don't have a TikTok, and I say, this is where your recruits are. This is where the next generation of your athletes are. So you need to have a presence on this platform. I know that it requires more work, but it's important because athletes are there, and this is the new medium. So TikTok was one of my favorites. I think during the pandemic, TikTok kept me going, as many people did. It was really a lot of fun to build Texas TikTok, except
Love
for
that.
that barbecue tweet or the barbecue TikTok.
No, it's got to be definitely going to be interesting to see more and more individual athletes get on those platforms and what they do with them as well. Number four, just a straight up question: is Texas back?
Getting there for sure. I mean, two directors cups. I mean, if we're talking football, I think that they have the talent, they have the I think that they have the coaches. Like I think that they have the potential, but I was also there when, Texas beat Georgia and then Sam said it on stage. I was there. And I think we all collectively still have nightmares about that. So I'm afraid to actually officially say it.
I feel like this year is almost like a get home free card because no matter what, you still have Arch coming next year, and so like you want this year to go well, obviously, but you have that great nugget on the way too.
Yeah, we also thought Quinn was coming the first
True.
time, and that quickly changed. So thankful. I'm sure that he's there now. So I'll wait for him to be on campus before I count that chicken.
So you heard it here. Texas maybe back. Definitely among the sports at large. Football, we'll see how the season goes. Number five. This could be a whole podcast. We can just talk about this all day. We've seen Kool-Aid McKinstry. We've seen DeColdest, his commercial come out
Oh my
recently.
gosh, the coldest.
So tell me your favorite NIL deal you've seen so far.
I mean, the DeColdest one is hilarious. I mean, I think it was RG3 posted a tweet about it being like, yeah, people are seeing this and now they're naming their kids De Ferrari and De Lamborghini. So so I'm like, I'm here for it. I think that one's anytime that there's a pun or anytime that it's like on the nose, I love it. So that one is probably my favorite so far.
I love it. If listeners don't know, there's a football player. I forget his last name now, but the first name is the coldest, and he of course did a deal with an HVAC or air conditioning company. So great. Number six, collectives and marketplaces. Buy or sell the future. Like, is it going to be? Are we seeing what's ultimately going to play out? Are these collectives here to stay? Like, what's your perspective on these collectives and marketplaces that are shooting up all over the place?
I mean, I don't think that they're going to be what they are today. I think that, but even NIL a year ago isn't what NIL is today. So I think that things are going to change, and as more money happens, or maybe less money because of said recession coming up, but or potential for recession, I should say, not trying to scare anybody, but yeah, I think that it's going to continue to change. I don't think anything's set in stone. I think that once we get kind of a national law, or we get some type of guardrails that are across the entire landscape, that's when we can start to expect things to settle a little bit. But right now, I still think that we're building on sand, like I said earlier.
Yeah. No, we're all learning as we go, and I mean, we have all these donors that want to help these athletes monetize their NIL, and they just can find creative ways to do so, and it's all above bar. So it's a matter of getting creative with it.
Yeah.
All right, number seven. I like hearing this one. So tell me, your favorite student athlete story so far from your time with an influencer. Like, which athlete do you call out as like, I really enjoyed this story?
So I was on campus with Stanford a few months ago,
Mhm.
and I have a great relationship with their director of NIL, and she introduced me to one of her athletes. This athlete had a very strong TikTok following. He was funny. He was smart. His name was Thunder Keck, and I'm
Wow.
like, his name is Thunder, and we just signed a deal with WWE. I'm like, you should reach out to them because he had the social
Oh
media
yeah.
chops. His name was Thunder, and like the WWE. And sure enough, he got signed. He sent me an email a few weeks later saying that he was going to be part of the
Wow.
next class. It was announced at the NIL summit, and I was like, yes. It was like
That's
all the stars
amazing.
aligned. It felt too perfect to not be a partnership there. So that's my favorite story to tell right now.
That's amazing. Yeah, and it's been really cool to see what WWE has done with NIL and with bringing college athletes into the fold and the future faces and heels of tomorrow as well. It's been really cool to see that.
And they are just getting started. They have so many cool ideas, and they have a lot of really cool stuff that they're working on. So they are just getting started.
Love it. And you mentioned you have the director of NIL at Stanford. Is every school going to have, or every major school going to have a director of NIL in the future? Or is it already happening? Is it already pretty widespread?
I think so. I think that that's going to be like the next strength coach or the next, creative director. I think that NIL is such a nuanced thing that requires so many different areas. I don't know that any one department can kind of own all of it. So I do see that each school having someone to manage that, especially as more and more we get more closer to schools being able to assist and schools being able to support. I think that a lot of the laws are lightening up on that. And I think even, I can't speak for the NCAA, but I think even they are kind of getting less overbearing on that part. So I do.
Totally. Interesting to see. I watched an ESPN Outside Lines story recently that they talked to, I think, the director of NIL at LSU, and just having someone athletes can go to ask questions and to get help. Like it's even that sense of assurance and that security means so much to them and makes everything work a little bit better.
I mean, really, I don't know why anyone thought the expectation should have been that, we turn the switch on July 1 and not expect the athletes to have questions and not expect them to need support. And I mean, it was only a few days between the NCAA announcing that they were going to their policy or their plan for NIL. Like, do you think that was enough time for all of these states with athletes who maybe didn't have an agent or didn't have someone to talk to about it and didn't think that it was going to happen for them for much longer, to all of a sudden it happened? So I do think that this is going to be a course correction for that, because they do need help. They just need the assistance. They don't have time to read a 400-page contract. Like they don't have time for these things, especially if we're expecting them to perform in the classroom and on the field.
Yeah. And to your point earlier, at the start, like toward the start of this podcast, the folks are getting at the ground level now in the NIL space. Like they're going to be able to have these leadership roles moving forward, and it's this whole like vertical, or whatever you want to call it, is growing before our eyes. It's really cool.
Yeah.
This might be the hardest question in the whole podcast, Mark. Based on what you told me before we started the interview, I might need to schedule like a week in Austin. So tell me, if I go visit Austin just for one meal, what is the best meal to get in Austin, and where do I get it?
Black's Barbecue. Make sure you go for lunch so that they don't run out of any of the good things. But Black's Barbecue for sure. My favorite. I'm not even a big meat eater, but that is where I would go if I was taking someone for one meal and they only had one in Austin.
And what's on the plate? What should I get?
Brisket. You got to get the brisket. They have some good sausage and turkey. That's fine. The sides are pretty good too. I would probably go for like a mac and cheese, maybe a coleslaw, but make sure you get the brisket.
There we go. All right. My mouth is watering. I'm ready. All right. Last one for you, Mark. This is another tough one that can go either way. What's going to happen first? Are we going to have CFP, college football playoff expansion, or are football players in college going to start getting a salary?
I think that the college football playoff expansion is going to happen first, because I think that might be where they need to get the money to start paying the players. So
that's actually a pretty good logic.
I think that there's a lot of things that need to be figured out on the second part. People smarter than I am, but if I were to guess, I'd say the college football playoff expands first.
I think I'm with you right there as well. And no matter what, we're gonna look up, 5-10 years from now, and who knows what all this is gonna look like. But we're gonna be along for the ride. All right, Mark, kicked ass in your quick slants. Now I get to hand the podcast over to you and tell us your social media all-star to follow. Just tell us who they are or what platform they're on and why they're worth following.
All right, so I'm going to cheat and give two, but they're related, sort of. But Hunter Woodall and Tara Davis. Those are the two that I would follow. I just love watching their antics. They are super fun. They are former track athletes. One was at Texas, one was at Arkansas. They're the ones to follow. I would follow them on Instagram for sure. I believe they're both on TikTok, but I follow them on Instagram, and they just take you behind their journey together. They were both Olympians, like the whole process of it. Definitely my favorites.
There we go. Sounds fun. And we'll link them up in the show recap, so definitely check them out. And then Mark, where can we find you as well as all things influencer across digital social?
If you want to like interact with me from a working perspective, I would go with my Twitter account. But if you just want to see my dogs, which I have two young corgis, that's where you can follow my Instagram. Instagram is just more of them. It's pretty much their account. So I would follow me on Twitter if you want the good stuff.
So there we go. Check them out. And again, like influencers doing great things in the space. This NIL space is changing all the time. Mark is helping to mold the athletes and their brands and helping them really empower them to build their brands. And Mark, cannot thank you enough for coming on the podcast today and lending us your insight and knowledge.
Oh, thank you for having me. I really appreciate being here.
Look forward to seeing the space continue to grow, and certainly for you to be a part of it.
Thank you so much.
So much fun talking to Mark. I love all the stories. I love all the insights. Only more and more stories to come as we get to year 2 of NIL, and maybe we'll have some more DeColdis Crawfords and Kool-Aid McKinstry's for some great punny NIL activations. But again, cannot thank Mark enough for his time, his insight, and letting us pick his brain today as we get ready for year 2 of NIL and a whole year of college athletics ahead of us. But that'll do it for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks again for listening. As always, I'm your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter at NJH287. Would love to hear from you. Hit me up on LinkedIn as well, where I post more content. The website, as always, is dsmsports.net, where you can find more episodes and content. And, of course, we'd love for you to subscribe and drop a review, whatever it is, on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, this is Neil Horowitz signing off from the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.